A lot of people like to compare modern Marvel to the Marvel of the past, especially the glorious, the golden Phase 1. But how does Phase 1 hold up? Let's find out together in this compilation. Well, it's been a year since I said I was gonna do this, but we're here, finally. It's time for me to watch the MCU movies and see how they hold up. This is the beginning of a series that I want to do where I go back and just watch all the movies in order, and I'll probably also go back and watch the shows, but we didn't start in order of chronology in terms of the history of the MCU, because if we did, I would have started with Agent Carter. But no, we're gonna start with in order of release. We're gonna start. So I'm starting with Iron Man, and now I know some of you might be saying, "But Amanda, wait a minute, you gotta start with Hulk. Shouldn't we start with Hulk?" Look, Hulk never got taken into the MCU. It never got fully incorporated, so that's why I'm starting with Iron Man. But if you guys want to hear my thoughts on Hulk movies, that can be its own video. Let me know in the comments. So with Iron Man, this was the first movie that we got that is considered MCU, but funnily enough, this one was actually, I believe, made by Paramount, and after watching it, I gotta wonder, what if instead of it being the Disney MCU, what if instead of Disney buying Marvel, they just kept working with Paramount? We would have like probably a totally different universe. This is a what if. This could be a what if. What if season 4. If you don't know me, hi, my name's Amanda. Some people call me Vamp because that's my username, VampX13. If this is your first time watching my channel, hello. Thanks for being here. I hope that you enjoy what we're about to do, which is talk about 2008 Iron Man. Why did I say it like that? He's an Iron Man. This film was very interesting to go back and watch because in some ways it is very 2008. And in some ways it is also very cheesy. I mean, even when I go back and look at the poster for Iron Man, I'm like, that's a poster. That's a superhero poster, all right. But the cool thing about this film is that I feel like it was happening at a time where Iron Man and superhero movies in general, actually, I shouldn't just say Iron Man. Iron Man is a hero that a lot of people put up there as one of like the top superheroes of all time. I don't think Iron Man really was the top superhero of all time until Robert Downey Jr. kind of made the character even more amazing than what we knew from the comics. Now, I know the Iron Man fans are going to come for me, and this is probably a controversial way for me to start off this video, but I said what I said, and I mean it. No, and I am not myself a very big Iron Man fan. But even as someone who that isn't my favorite hero, I can really appreciate what they did with this character in the movie. And the movie does make you like Iron Man. I mean, one of the things that I was apprehensive about, I remember when this film first came out, was the fact that it is a movie about an arms dealer, basically. Like, this is a guy that makes weapons, and we're calling him a hero, and he's like got like a bunch of money, but he's not trying to like necessarily help people. Isn't that like what we would usually call a villain? So I always thought the idea for Iron Man was kind of wacky. But then I remember when I first saw this movie, I was like, wow, Iron Man's like, this is a pretty cool guy. And having watched it again now, like 17 years later or something, wow, I'm old. Having watched it now, I have to say, Iron Man is cool. And I think the cool thing about this movie is that while there is a lot of awesome action elements to it, and a lot of cool technological stuff. Obviously, we're dealing with Iron Man, Tony Stark. He's brilliant. He is also very skilled at creating stuff. He makes his own suit. We get the suit transformation, and this is like one of the best elements of this film. When he gets suited up for the first time in his new sleek suit that he made. Also, the training montages that we get to see and appreciate just how much effort actually goes into flying an Iron Man suit, because it is not easy. Tony struggles. He hits a lot of walls. People laughed real hard at that part in the movie theater. People died of laughter. Having watched it again, not as funny when you know it's coming, but still, just seeing it, iconic.
What?
But the cool thing about this film is that although it does have a lot of those great moments, and obviously everything with Yinsen, which I really love, Sean Taub, who plays Yinsen, he is so good in this. And then I was like, I hope he did other stuff. And he did do other stuff, guys. He's in like TV shows. You can still go see our boy Sean Taub today. He's rocking it. He's so freaking good in this movie as Yinsen. And I think the best thing about the film is that it's just actors getting to act and getting to play. There's so much playful nature in the movie. And when I was watching it, now I know a little bit about how it was made, but I don't know a ton. So I was wondering how much of it was improvised, because I knew some of it was improvised. And honestly, when you're watching it, you can tell. Like as an actor, I could tell when there were moments where I felt like people were kind of just riffing, but people know their characters so well that it's very believable. Did you actually know that this is also a film that was largely unscripted? They're basically like scripting it as they were shooting it. And when Tony has to do his demonstration of the weapons, he's wearing sunglasses because RDJ had to read the script on cue cards because they had just been workshopping that script for that scene that day. This is a film that was a bit desperate in how it was made. It feels like, you know, they're really putting everything they can into it because we had some flops when it comes to superhero films around this time. Superhero films weren't doing as hot as they had been. Now, granted, we've always had some really strong ones. I mean, obviously there were the Spider-Man films, the original ones. Obviously, I'm not talking about the Sony villain Spider-Verse, rest in peace. There were X-Men. There was also Blade. So we had some good stuff, but we'd also had some stinky ones recently. We had films like, the Fantastic Four movies. Oh boy, remember those ones? That was something. Elektra, remember Elektra? You know, the end of the X-Men era, which, you know, we got like Last Stand, which wasn't the best. Remember Catwoman? Catwoman was a thing. You know, the 2003 Hulk, not as well received. We had some stinky movies. So this was kind of a film that I feel you get a sense that this is like kind of a last shot here to make superhero movies cool again, to make them fun and to make them something that we could keep making them. And it was made clearly by a bunch of people who really loved superhero stories and who loved comics and wanted to bring that to us. It was also a redemption moment for Robert Downey Jr. You get this sense that he's really trying to give it his all in this role and really prove that he is worthy of this comeback. Just everyone here is on their A game, and the best part about it isn't even, like I said, these action moments. I actually think the fight at the end with Obadiah and Tony is actually like one of the least interesting parts of the film, in my opinion. Although the fact that we got Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane, the fact that we live in that reality, it feels insane to me. It feels surreal going back and watching that. But the best part is these character moments, is these actors getting to play these characters and just have these small moments together where they really get to establish their relationships with each other as characters, but also just who the characters are in these little scenes. I mean, some of my favorite scenes are the ones with Rhodey and Tony. They have a lot of really, really great moments. Actually, there's a really short scene where Tony, after he comes back and he announces, you know, we're not going to do weapons anymore, he goes to visit Rhodey and says he wants him to come check out what he's been working on. And Rhodey's like, oh, is it for the military? That's great, because we've all been worried that, like, you know, you left, and it's like, man, we need you here, you know? And he's like, well, no, it's not for the military. It's kind of like a just for me thing. Like, it's kind of just, I'm just keeping it for us. It's not a military thing. And Rhodey's just like, man, like, come back when you actually want to work with me. Like, this is disappointing. It's just such a heart-wrenching moment. But then you also have the oh man, this is another great one. The moment with Pepper and Tony where Tony needs to change out his arc reactor and Pepper has to help him. It's just so cute. And then at the end, it's like feels really heavy when, you know, Pepper says like, don't ever make me do that again. That was horrifying and gross and weird and I didn't like it and stressful. Tony's just like, I don't have anyone else. Like, you're all I got, Pepper. And it's like, oh, Tony. So there's a lot of really great, just small character moments that allow us to really build who these people are. and where it almost like, just because it's an origin story doesn't mean that it can't be rewatchable and can't be fun. It's not just serving the purpose of getting us somewhere, it's actually enjoying the moments that we're in. It's a movie that feels very present. It also, like, honestly holds up in terms of how it looks, other than the CG fire and that one time when we tried to do the 2000s thing where everyone was trying to put cameras on weapons and guns and stuff. That was a whole thing that we tried that did not look good, and it does not look good in this. But thankfully, it's only one shot. But all of the character moments, the acting, just a lot of the story and what it's trying to do and build for these characters specifically is really fun. And the fact that they just kind of let actors show up and play is a strength of the early days of the MCU that I wonder, you know, how far have we gotten from it? Do we trust our talent as much as we used to? Or are we trying to build something bigger and better by simply just doing more? Which, you know, more isn't always great. In fact, I feel like a lot of the times when you're making a film, when you have less, it requires you to be more creative, to push yourself, to make something better with the resources and the time that you have. So overall, I really liked the first Iron Man, even though, yeah, it's got weird, cheesy moments, and it's got some convenient plot stuff, like when Tony gets found and the one helicopter that finds him is Rhodey's. How convenient. And when Rhodey finds him, and then he makes the joke about him riding in the fun V, and he's like, next time you're gonna ride with me. He's asking him how his ride was, and I was like, is that really what you would say when your friend is like on the verge possibly of death and you don't know what he's been through? You're gonna make a joke right now? Really, Rhodey? We're making jokes? I understand. You gotta lighten up the mood somehow. But there's also the moment of, you know, when they're on the plane and they're flying to the demonstration, and Tony encourages them to have sake, and then they're having these drinks. And then for some reason, all the people on Tony's plane that work there, all his, whatever you want to call them, air stewards, air hostesses, they also just become like strippers. That's the whole thing. Can I say strippers on YouTube? They become ladies of the pole, if you will. They're not even really, because they're not like dancing on the pole. They're not pole dancers. They're women that dance around a pole with their shirts all tied up. It's just it's only a second, thank goodness, but it's very 2000s, you know what I mean? So it has its moments where it's pretty corny and kind of, you're like, a little eye roll. But overall, its heart is just in the right place, and I really, really enjoyed it. Having gone back to Iron Man, I think I have to give it, honestly, I think I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. I'm actually surprised at how much I enjoyed this, because I did go back a year ago and rewatch it when I was going to originally film this video, and I didn't like it as much. But I don't know, that extra year has just made me appreciate it even more. Maybe I've just been watching even worse movies last year, and it really made me appreciate the masterpiece that is Iron Man, because it kind of is that. Even though it's just a really fun superhero movie, there's a lot in it to appreciate in terms of the actual skill that was required to make something like this, especially when you know some of the inner workings of what was going on behind the scenes and just how much went into bringing us this film. So that's what I have for this one, friends. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Iron Man, the original Iron Man. We're gonna continue on, so I think that means that I'll be watching the Hulk next, if we want to count that. Yeah, I guess Hulk, or we go to Iron Man 2. We either do Hulk or Iron Man 2. I guess I could watch Hulk. It is included, but then it's not really tied in because we kind of end up going in a different direction. We recast Hulk, but it's in there, so we'll probably talk about it. That's all I have for this one. Let me know your thoughts on Iron Man and sort of the original days, the early days of the MCU, what you think it would have been like if, you know, we hadn't had Disney doing the MCU. Do you think it would have been different? Do you think it would have been mostly the same? What changes do you think we could have seen? And, you know, how did you feel about Iron Man when you first watched it, or even going back? I mean, the one thing I will say too is that Terrence Howard, obviously not in the rest of the films for a reason, obviously, but even just watching it, I was like, man, Terrence Howard is also good in this. Like, I know he's crazy. I understand why we don't have Terrence Howard, but man, just everyone in this film is just at the top of their game. Hello again, friends. It's been a minute, and if you thought that I forgot about this series, I did not, because it is time for the Incredible Hulk. Hulk smash!
Is that all you got?
So we're going to talk about the things that I liked, the things that I didn't like with The Incredible Hulk. It is part of the MCU, and just to clarify with you guys, in my previous video, I was talking about, do I do the Hulk, do I not do the Hulk? I was talking about Ang Lee's Hulk, which The Incredible Hulk is kind of an unofficial sequel to. So just to clarify, when I was talking about that, I was referring to Ang Lee's Hulk, but then later I was talking about The Incredible Hulk. Those are two different movies, and I should have been more clear, and I apologize about that, but yeah, that's what we're talking about here, and they do have a connection, even though this is obviously its own universe, its own thing, because it's part of the MCU universe. Now, that being said, at the beginning of this film, it starts off very interestingly. It starts off with this montage of the origin of the Hulk, who ends up becoming the Hulk. Bruce Banner becomes the Hulk through experimenting on himself, and kind of in a way to recreate almost like the super soldier serum is more what happens in this universe in terms of what they're doing. Very much kind of like the Ultimate Universe from Marvel Comics. There's a lot of stuff that just ties back a lot to the super soldier serum with the MCU. And when it comes to this though, instead of us having a super soldier serum, we're getting a gamma radiation, not serum, but just a gamma radiation experiment gone wrong, which is what turns Bruce into the Hulk. Of course, he never knew what he was really working on. He didn't know it was weapons. It's not his fault. And he wants to get rid of now this curse. The opening of this movie actually makes me feel like I'm trapped in an ABC, like, opening for a TV series that just doesn't end, it just keeps going on, or like CSI or something. I actually appreciate what they're doing, because I do like that this film doesn't start with the origin. It actually starts with Bruce. He's already the Hulk, and he's just trying to gain control of this and ultimately find a way to cure himself. So I like that we skipped the origin for Hulk, because, you know, we've already had so many stories that have gone into that. And I think the first half of this film is actually pretty interesting, and I like it. I also feel that the thing with the opening, though, is my favorite part of it is when they show articles that are kind of piecing together what happened, as opposed to it being like a dramatic reenactment of a similar story to Ang Lee's Hulk. It's not quite the same, but similar indeed. The other thing that I feel about this film is there was obviously a lot of behind the scenes drama, and before I sat down to film this video, I got a little lost in the sauce when it came to all that behind the scenes drama, which we'll talk about a little bit. A lot of it centered around Ed Norton in this film, who I love as an actor. I think he's an amazing performer, and with the rumors that he had tried to like rewrite the script and just that he was difficult to work with, he just wanted more creative control. Now, the interesting thing is that he seemed to be pretty in line based on things that have been said after with Louis Leterrier, who is the director for The Incredible Hulk, and it seemed like what they wanted to do, especially what Ed wanted to do, was bring a darker approach to superhero stories, which is also interesting because that is something that we would see with the Dark Knight series that Nolan did, which comes out shortly after, actually, Incredible Hulk and Iron Man.
It's gone.
That is an example of how you can do sort of a darker tone and you can really make it work. Obviously, with Batman, it works really well, but I think also with Hulk, it could have worked really well. That being said, I do feel that Ed Norton in this film as Bruce Banner is kind of just all right. I can see what he's going for with kind of a PTSD angle, like Hulk is basically possessing him, and I think at one point Ed said that it was basically like Hulk is like Bruce, like he takes over his mind. I will say he has a line in this film where he describes what it's like, and he talks about how it feels like your brain is basically being filled with like acid. It sounds extremely painful and awful, and it's a traumatic experience for him where he feels like he is not in control. He feels hazy, like he's in the back seat, and then sometimes he just gets flashes of what he has experienced as the Hulk, which he sees as a completely different entity. Now, I think some of these angles are interesting for the exploration of the character, but ultimately I just feel like when it comes comes to the comics, there's a lot more interesting interpretations that we've gotten of Bruce's relationship with the Hulk than what we get in this film. And while I do feel like they talk a lot about how Bruce feels about the Hulk, we don't get as much of how Hulk feels about Bruce, and I wish we got a little bit more of that. The ultimate thing, though, is that Bruce Banner is just not as interesting as characters like Emil Blonsky. I feel like Tim Roth in this movie kind of steals the film. Even though we know a lot less about Emil because we don't really focus too much on his character, he just is here every now and then, he's working with Ross, and then he ultimately goes through a treatment to become like the Hulk when they're able to sort of get a sample and try to recreate that. And then ultimately he gets a thirst for that power, wanting to square off with the Hulk, wanting to have the power of the Hulk. And he in the end convinces Samuel Stearns to turn him into what will become Abomination. And we get that classic line where Samuel Stearns says,
I don't know what you've got inside you already. The mixture could be an abomination.
Understandably, because I feel like Emil Blonsky, he does get that Hulk smash. Hulk smashes a lot in this film. And as I said, I do think that is the thesis of the film. It has a lot of interesting concepts, but it just doesn't really ever fully come together like Iron Man does. And it feels like sometimes this film is at war with itself. And having heard some of the behind the scenes conflicts that existed, particularly with Ed Norton and Marvel, and with Louis Leterrier and Marvel as well, this idea that they kind of wanted a more serious angle, Marvel wanted it to be a little bit more commercial, a little bit more humorous, a little lighter. You can see why it doesn't really fully come together. But the concepts that I think are really cool is we have three sort of key characters that have different approaches to the gamma radiation, which gives us the power of the Hulk here. So you have Bruce Banner, who does not like that. He wants to get rid of it. He wants a cure. He actually hates being the Hulk. He hates the Hulk. Emil, who becomes just really wants it. Like the more he gets, the more he wants. So he is power thirsty in this film and becomes Abomination as a result of that, sort of acting as a kind of a cool dark mirror to our Hulk in the sense of being a monster fully realized, whereas Bruce is kind of trying to fight against the monster that is within him. And then we have Samuel Stearns, who is kind of more the mad science angle. He's like obsessed with the power and just enamored by it and just wants to like learn more about it and study it. And ultimately he goes down the path to become the leader, although, you know, we never really got more of that, but we probably will in Brave New World, which is coming out soon. So curious to see what else we get of the leader. I think all of those elements are really cool, but I just feel like it doesn't say anything unifying ultimately, and it really just becomes a story about Bruce becoming the Hulk. He's on the run, he wants a cure, he gets found, he has a fight, he goes on the run, he gets found, he has a fight, and ultimately goes on the run. And then he gets found after maybe getting a cure, and then it doesn't get a cure really, and then has a fight, and then ultimately decides, yeah, I guess I'll just kind of be the Hulk. Because at the end of the film, Ed Norton is seen meditating as Bruce Banner, and then we hear his heart speeding up, and then his eyes open and they're green. Like he's embraced almost this idea of using the Hulk, harnessing that power, but without any actual emotional beats to bring us to that moment. I guess because he had to fight Abomination in this awful CG fight. Honestly, the best fight in the film is the one that happens in the middle, where he has the standoff against the military and where he quickly disposes of Emil Blonsky. Hulk smash. That is the best part. And then the fight that we get at the end feels a little bit empty. Like I get he wants to protect Betty. That's sort of Bruce Banner's, I guess, motivation here to jump into the fight as the Hulk. And because he feels like he's the only one as the Hulk that can stand against Abomination. I understand all of that, but it just ends up being a really lackluster, does not hold up well, that CG fight between these two monsters that feels ultimately like an empty kaiju fight. There's just not a lot of emotional stakes. And I gotta say, I feel bad for Betty in this movie. Betty, I feel like they basically wanted to do Pepper Potts, but as a doctor. We'll call her Dr. Pepper. She's basically Pepper Potts as a doctor, Dr. Pepper with glasses, and whispers all the time. She's like, oh, Bruce, like, come with me, Bruce. Bruce, wake up, Bruce. Bruce, I think that we're in danger. Where are we? How will we go on the run? And she's supposed to be smart, but we never really get that sense from her other than the fact that she wears glasses. And I get that she's supposed to be sensitive and empathic, and I think that's a beautiful element of Betty, but it's really kind of all we get with her. I don't know. It's interesting because I also really like Liv Tyler, so I don't want to blame her for it, but I just feel like I don't know if it's the direction, if it's just the script here. The script is done by Zach Penn, and apparently Ed Norton did try to do some rewrites or something like that, but Zach Penn was the one that ultimately ended up getting the only script writing credit for this film. Louis Leterrier has said that the first half of the film is basically what he wanted, and the second half of the film is basically what Marvel wanted. So take that as you will. And I feel like the first half of the film is definitely better than the second half. Betty doesn't get much to do throughout really any of it. She kind of feels like an accessory who's supposed to be there because there's this romance, and that's kind of helping to ground Bruce, and he obviously wants to protect Betty. Even when he's the Hulk, she has this connection to the Hulk as well. But it never really, it just doesn't, they don't really build it in a way that feels meaningful. So that's the unfortunate part of that. I feel like actually the only moments where Betty pops at all in this film and is interesting is when she actually does get mad. She has a few moments where she gets mad at Ross, where we learn that that's her dad. Or I mean, if you didn't read the comics, you'd be learning that that's her dad. I thought that was a really good moment actually, because I thought people that are not familiar with this character, this is like a really great moment. And also William Hurt as Ross is so good. Man, I am really gonna miss him as Ross. He's really good in this movie. I feel like, yeah, he and Liv kind of have a great moment when he's in the tank and she says, you know, Dad, like, stop. And then she's like, Dad. And you can see that conflict in him. Like, he's on this hunt for the Hulk. He can't give it up. But at the same time, like, that's his daughter out there. And the other moment where I feel like she actually kind of just feels like a person is when she gets mad at the cab driver when they're driving through New York City, and she gets mad at him for driving all crazy and then like being flirty with her. And that's the only other moment. And then Bruce basically says, you know, I have some techniques that might help you for that anger. And she's like, shut it. I don't want to hear about it. I like that moment as well. Ultimately, this is a film that feels a little bit more chaotic in comparison to Iron Man. There's just a lot of moving parts where it's a chase to a place, to another place, to another place, but it doesn't really feel unified. And that's probably because there was that feud over the tone of the film. I think the moment when I just kind of usually check out of this film is after the fight at the campus with the military. After that, I always struggle to get through the rest of it, and it was, again, a struggle indeed for me to finish it. I even think the fight at the bottle plant near the beginning of the film with Hulk is much more interesting because there's less CG used there. It's a lot more mysterious. Hulk's in shadow. He actually feels more intimidating because of the mystery there. There's like a power to him, but it's like this force that we see, and so our imaginations get to fill in the gaps a lot more. I wish they had done more of that in the film. I think that actually would have been a stronger choice. I understand though that you kind of need to show the Hulk, and that when it came to even Ang Lee's Hulk, that was a huge complaint people had with that film, was that there just wasn't enough Hulk in it. So you want to deliver, but at the same time, that CG was not where we needed it to be at the time. It was 2008. So overall, I think this is a film that has some really fun fan service. It has some really cool concepts, but ultimately, it just doesn't come together, especially when you consider just how many great people you have actually working on the film, and when you consider the comic book material that we also have for a lot of these characters' backstories and just their relationships with each other, especially the relationship, I think, between Hulk and Bruce, which I just feel they didn't really nail in this, although I appreciate that I think Ed Norton was trying to really bring something to it and really did work hard on this film. I don't think he phoned it in. It just doesn't sing the way we need it to sing. Ultimately, I would give this one a 3 out of 5. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with a 3 out of 5. I'm tempted to go 2, but there is a lot of stuff that I like in it. I even like how green it is. It's such a green film. And there's a lot of characters that I think the actors are doing great jobs. I just wish, I don't know, I guess ultimately I just wish that the script was better, really. I feel like a lot of what we're missing here is coming from the script. So that's what I got to say about that. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How are you feeling about The Incredible Hulk? If you missed it, I did a review of Iron Man as well. This is my journey through the MCU, rewatching everything and kind of going back and just reassessing it, something that obviously I didn't do on my channel because I wasn't making content at the times that these films came out and I originally saw them. Well, we're back. This time, we're talking about Iron Man 2. What's this film about? Toys. At least in terms of some of the choices we made for this story. Hello again, friends. My name is Amanda. You might know me as Vamp, and here we are again. Haha. Ready to talk about Iron Man 2. If you didn't know, I've been doing a sort of MCU in review series, and this is a part of that. So if you missed my other 2 videos, feel free to check them out. But for now, let's talk about this film. Overall, when it comes to Iron Man 2, I would say the first half of this film is really good. The part of the film that focuses on Tony and his struggles and him kind of coming to terms with his mortality and the fact that he's gonna die soon and making all these crazy choices is some of the most compelling elements of the film, seeing that struggle within himself. Tony squaring off with the Senate.
F you, Mr. Stark. F you, buddy.
All the awkward stuff at the party, Justin and Anthony and Monaco.
Anthony, is that you?
My least
Hey,
favorite person
pal.
on earth, Justin.
How you doing?
And Tony and Pepper's banter, which is on point as per usual. Tony and Ivan's conversation in the prison. These are all some key moments that I liked. And they're all mostly from the first half of this film, which is 2 hours. So how do I feel about the rest of it? Let's discuss all of that. I honestly kind of wish that they had gone a little bit more along the path of Demon in the Bottle with this story. If you don't know Demon in the Bottle, it is a very famous Iron Man story from 1979 in the comics. It's a 9-issue story, and it deals with Tony's struggle with alcoholism and his kind of having to confront that and come to terms with that. And while Iron Man 2 does hit some of those beats, ultimately they decided to not go down the route of dealing with the alcoholism. Although there are elements of it in this film anyways, and there are also elements of it clearly in the first Iron Man, we never really address it head on. Now, there are a few reasons for that. One of the reasons that I actually feel is a really good one is that Robert Downey Jr.'s wife was actually an executive producer on this film, and she did not want to really go down that path because she was worried about her husband's safety. Honestly, fair. The other reason, however, is a little bit more ridiculous, and that reason, of course, is toys. When it comes to the toys, obviously they didn't want to go that route because they were worried about how that would be marketed. They were also worried for Marvel Studios with how this film would be marketed overseas had they gone down that path. So rather than do that, they decided to protect the toys and protect the marketing of the film by not going that route. I think it's a missed opportunity though. Imagine the toys we could have had. Here comes alcoholic Iron Man with his bottle of booze. He's drinking, he's driving, he's iron, he's man. For a film that actually doesn't get into Tony's alcoholism, he is weirdly hungover for a lot of this film. Now granted, I guess Tony might not necessarily be hungover, he might just be saying he's hungover because he doesn't want to talk about the toxicity of his blood. Because in this film, instead of going the fully Demon in the Bottle route, we decided to go down the path of Tony is dying because his arc reactor is actually killing him, because the element that he uses to power it, palladium, is destroying his body. It's just making his blood toxic. At one point, his blood is half toxic, and I was like, wow. I'd be feeling rough. Tony was feeling rough at that part. So that's what we decided to focus on with this, which is still even kind of all right. I do wish that they were able to come at it from more of an angle where Tony is a little bit more responsible for it. I think it would have added some depth to this, but that's fine. Because you know what? We get Black Widow in this movie, and I really love Black Widow in this film. I think this is so cool that this is Black Widow's introduction. I love Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, so getting to see her again in this role, it just was so nostalgic for me. I've always been a big fan of Black Widow, hence why I did a cosplay. She actually might have been one of the first superhero cosplays that I did, I want to say, is Black Widow. I love Black Widow. So I think this film really does her justice. I think they show how capable she is, how badass she is, how smart she is. She can speak all these languages. She can like get into people's computers, and she just comes across as being so cool. And obviously she also looks great, which maybe is focused on a little bit more in this film than it needed to be. A lot of people say that, you know, this film actually caused people to see Black Widow in this overly sexualized light. Now, I would argue that in the comics, Black Widow's kind of always been a sexy character, so I think that was going to happen anyways, but I do agree that this film has some scenes that don't need to be there, and I can imagine what the meetings were like too. It's just Jon Favreau, and he's like, look, Scarlett, baby, I'm so happy you're here. Come on in, have a seat. Let's talk about some of these scenes we're going to be doing in this film. So, I got a couple big ones, all right, baby doll? Okay, John, what are we doing? Listen to me, Scarlett. All right, so we got this idea. We're gonna be fighting in the ring. It's gonna be Happy. It's gonna be Tony. They're gonna be mashing it up. And then all of a sudden, you get into the ring, all right? And then you're gonna just come after Happy. You're gonna wrap your juicy thighs around his neck. And it's gonna be great. And you know who's gonna be playing Happy? It's me, the director, Jon Favreau. Okay, John. And there's one more scene that I got for you, Scarlett. There's one more scene that you just gotta know about. So, we're in the car, and you're changing. You're getting into your spy gear. You're getting undressed. And, of course, you're gonna be having a driver, and he's gonna be noticing that you're changing. He's gonna be like, oh my goodness, looking back at you like, woo, can't believe it. Black Widow getting naked in the back of my vehicle. And you know who that driver's gonna be? Is it gonna be you, John? Is it gonna be you? It's gonna be me as Happy. You got it, baby. So for some reason, there's some weird moments that are just really thirsty in this movie, with Happy Hogan just thirsting after Black Widow, and it comes across as being a bit much, which I would even say is maybe an understatement. That is a bit of an issue with Black Widow in this film, but overall, I feel like the characterization of her as a badass is really strong as well. She also has that awesome hallway scene, one of my favorite scenes in the film, where she gets to take out all of these bad guys, and then Happy's just struggling to take down one guy, and by the time he's done, he looks up and the entire hallway has been cleared by Black Widow. Love that moment. I think it's so funny, and I just feel like it's so real, you know? Honestly, I feel like Black Widow was all the shield that we needed in this film. And when it comes to Shield's involvement in Iron Man 2, this feels like one of the things that the studio meddled with. And I do think there's a lot of studio meddling in this film. It feels like they felt pressure to get the MCU ball rolling, and so they wedged Shield in here and had Nick Fury and Phil Coulson show up and not really do very much other than being kind of an exposition machine. And I mean, especially when we're talking about Phil Coulson in here, Phil Coulson literally does nothing in this film. Like, why is Phil even here? Even when he says he's gonna do something, he just doesn't do it. He's left with Tony, right? And he says, if you try to leave the perimeter, I'll tase you. And then Tony immediately leaves his house, immediately leaves the perimeter to go buy strawberries and go see Pepper. That's a whole thing that happens. And when he gets back, Phil is even like, I heard that we had a breach and you left. And Tony's just like, yeah, like, where were you when I did that? You said you were gonna stop me and you just didn't. So there wasn't even an instigation where Tony had to outsmart him and we just didn't see it or anything. And Phil's response is that he was doing stuff. What stuff? This was a direct order from the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, for you to watch this man, and you were doing stuff? What? And then, right after all of this, Phil Coulson basically dips to go to New Mexico, which obviously we know, with the MCU as it is now, we know Thor and all that stuff, which is also the post-credit scene for this film, which is fine. But also, why was he even here? Why is he just there to say that line? Oh wait, no, he does do something super important actually. How dare I forget? He helps Tony lift a pipe. Oh my goodness. And if Tony hadn't lifted that pipe and they hadn't put that design for Cap's shield underneath the pipe, then Tony wouldn't have been able to make the element that he needed to save his life, except that he was already kind of fine because they basically gave him magic juice, a magic shot to his neck that removes all of the symptoms. But he's not out of the clear yet, except we never see his blood toxicity ever again. It doesn't come up again. We're done with that, and he's just focusing on making this new element, and you feel literally no pressure for him to do that. I mean, he literally leaves to go get strawberries. His life is on the line. He's been cured of his symptoms, and the first thing he says is like, I'm not gonna focus on this right now. I'm gonna go give Pepper some strawberries, which she's allergic to, by the way. Great job, Tony. I think when it comes to this film, and especially with me talking about the involvement of S.H.I.E.L.D. in this, and the random scene at the donut shop and all of that stuff, it just feels bloated in kind of a weird way. They just add more layers to this film, like having S.H.I.E.L.D. in it, instead of using the elements and the characters that already exist in the film, which I think would have added more emotion, more connection for us watching, and more depth to this film overall. We could have dived more into Tony's life being in danger. We could have dealt more into how he feels responsible for that. Even if we're not going with the, alcohol angle with it, we could go more with an angle that's maybe he feels responsible, obviously, for what he's putting into his body. It's kind of a different angle on that, but you're still kind of exploring this sense of, misusing, abusing, mistreating your body in this way. And we just never really fully dive into that. We also kind of underutilized Mickey Rourke in this as Whiplash, who I actually feel just got done kind of dirty in terms of how that character was used here. Although Mickey Rourke sounds like he was interesting to work with based on some articles I've read about the behind the scenes on this film, which ultimately, the behind the scenes on Iron Man 2 is more interesting, I would say, than the actual product of Iron Man 2. And it does ultimately feel like a product a bit, doesn't it? When it comes to Mickey Rourke, apparently a few of the things that he needed to agree to sign on to this film, other than more money, was he wanted to have his hair in a samurai bun. That was something that he needed for his character. And he requested having a bird for the character. So yeah, he apparently also didn't really even know what the film was about. I don't think they told him any of that, and I definitely don't think he was looking a bunch into the comics. In fact, it sounds like when he was on set, he actually didn't like the fact that it was a comic book film and felt that that made it like less of a film. So while Mickey Rourke is obviously a little strange in terms of his involvement in this film, I do feel that he is a very talented performer who ultimately brought depth to the character with what he was given. Now, granted, he's kind of doing his own thing with it, but I think that that could still work here. And I feel like we could have made him more of a compelling villain by just fleshing out some of his and his dad's backstory a little bit more. We kind of just get the base level of the backstory, and it just paints them both as kind of the worst, scummy people who are just in all of the science for money, and they don't care about anything else. They're just all about money. But why do they need this money? Is it just that they are power hungry? That's the way that it's painted. But I feel like we could have played more with something more interesting than just, oh, they're just greedy people. Especially when it comes to Ivan's vendetta against Tony, which clearly comes from him blaming Stark Industries for the downfall of his father. And the fact that his father also, in essence, drank himself to death, which is another element in this, is another opportunity for us to explore something deeper here. I mean, but you can kind of feel those moments when they really wanted to go demon in a bottle with it. Like the beginning of the film. The beginning of the film was completely changed. Let's be real. And I honestly think the original beginning on this film is the one we should have gotten, with Pepper and Tony and Tony's you know, been drinking and he's sick to his stomach, and then he has to jump down and do this whole presentation in his suit. And that is a whole thing that happens. And then it changes a lot of the context, especially of that first scene when he leaves and he's walking through and it's all from his perspective and you can see his hands and everything kind of feels chaotic and he's signing all these autographs. It just feels like when we first see that blood toxicity, it was supposed to be about him being intoxicated. And then we later learn it's not about that, it's just about him being sick. There's also a moment later in the film when he's watching the message from his dad, Howard Stark, and one of the outtakes in that footage that he's watching on the reel or whatever is his dad having a drink. And I feel like that's another parallel of his dad drank, and maybe that's why also Tony drinks. There's so many things that I feel like they built in here and then they just didn't do anything with it. It feels like they actually pivoted maybe partway through. I mean, I don't disagree with the idea of wanting to keep Robert Downey Jr. safe. In fact, I'm super for that. It just is a little unfortunate because I do feel like it's a really powerful story and there's a lot of stuff in here that you could have played with around that story if they had fully committed to it. The other thing is when it comes to the effects in this film, while some of them look amazing, I mean, I love the Iron Man suitcase. I love that moment. There's also that CGI fire again. Oh boy. We didn't get it in Iron Man 1 and we're not getting it in Iron Man 2 either. That fire when Tony goes into the fireplace looking kind of rough. Also, it's clear that they did reshoots and that a lot of that involves S.H.I.E.L.D. I think that's where they wedged S.H.I.E.L.D. in. And the scene where they're at Tony's house and they're out on the patio is clearly done on a soundstage. And you can tell because you can see the weird soft edges of the people. I don't understand how back then we weren't good at shooting green screen. And even now in the Marvel universe, we struggle with it. Like in Captain, people's edges are just too soft. They need to toughen up those edges. They need to make them sharper. I don't understand. Sam Rockwell is delightful in this film, though. Just a quick little thing to talk about here that I did love. I just love Sam Rockwell. Pretty much he's a delight in everything I've seen him in, even in Argyle, and that film is not good. And he's just the dumbest Justin Hammer ever here, and I love it.
Turn to the right. Oh, shit! Oh, shit!
All in all, the sets are also not very interesting. So we don't only have missed opportunities with some of the CG and some of the character choices that we're making in this film, or just character exploration, rather, I should say, but the sets are kind of flat. The only ones that are interesting, the only ones that are super memorable that aren't just a room, it feels like, is the Formula One track, obviously in Monaco. That's pretty interesting. Iron Man's home, but we also established that in Iron Man 1, so does it really count? I guess not really. And then the Stark Expo. But the Stark Expo also is basically Disney World, which is also really weird when you think about the fact that Disney acquired Marvel before this film came out. This film was already in development, so I'm not saying that Disney came in and made Stark Expo Disney World. But if the shoe fits. So that might have been some involvement. I feel like Howard is basically Walt Disney here with his model and with the fact that he's kind of a questionable character, but ultimately his heart was in the right place, so we just forgive him for all his misdeeds, which I also find a little like we're letting Stark off a bit too easy in this. Like he left a message for Tony that he finds years later about how he believed in him. And so because of that, Tony's just supposed to forgive his dad. All right. At the end of the day, this feels like a film that is wrestling with some studio meddling that is different from what we saw on The Incredible Hulk, because I think ultimately the film was still able to come together a little bit in a more of a clean way where everyone was able to get on the same page as opposed to people being at odds, which I think was more the vibe on that set. But it's still not as good as the first Iron Man film. I think the final fight here especially is very disappointing. It's anticlimactic, it's too short, and I think that the fact that we never hear of a lot of elements from this film again is a sign that it's just not super memorable. I mean, the Stark Expo is a huge thing in this movie. Do we ever go back to the Stark Expo? Is it ever mentioned again? I'm gonna be listening for it as I watch through, but I don't think it is. I mean, I guess there were probably a lot of casualties, something that also is completely glazed over in this movie. So perhaps they had to close their doors forever. So rest in peace, Stark Expo, and all the people that died from the falling glass in that stage theater area. This is why you don't have a fully glass ceiling, by the way. All in all, this film has some cool moments. I gotta give it that. And I really like Black Widow being here. There's a lot of things to like, but it's just fine. It's not super memorable. There's some good stuff in it. There's some stuff that feels unnecessary in it. And it's just kind of mid, I would say. So I would give this one a 3 out of 5. It's not even a solid 3 out of 5. It's just a 3 out of 5. I think I would still put it above The Incredible Hulk. So if I had to rank it, I'm gonna probably do a tier list when I'm done this. But if I had to rank this film, I think I would put it at a C. It's fine. It's a passing grade, but there's nothing really that has a lot of oomph. It's got a lot of good actors in it, but nothing that really just sparks like Iron Man did, like the first Iron Man did. So that's where I'm at with it. And as we go through, I'll be given my tier list ranks, and then at the end, we'll do a full tier list with all of them. We'll come back and we'll do a video on that. That's all I have for this one. Let me know your thoughts on Iron Man 2 down in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you like it more than Iron Man, less than Iron Man, more than The Incredible Hulk, less than The Incredible Hulk? You know, is this film super memorable for you? Are you a big Whiplash fan? Is this what you were excited for? Did Whiplash meet your expectations? When people think about Thor, they tend to think about the epic fights, the hammer, Mjolnir, the lightning, the helmet even, which is weirdly in this movie. But you know what we all forget about? The acting.
I was a fool to think you were ready.
Father.
Welcome back, everyone. It's me, Amanda, and we are here to discuss another MCU film. Yay! Next up is, of course, Thor. And Thor is an interesting film to return to because it is one that I think a lot of people think of as being kind of lackluster. They just don't think about it being like one of the best MCU films of all time. We all loved Iron Man. There are people out there that loved The Incredible Hulk a lot, and Thor is like, it's just the one that I think for most people flew under the radar until pretty much Ragnarok. Ragnarok was the big Thor standout, I believe, which is why I was pleasantly surprised when I came back to this film. This movie has a crazy cast. It's got Natalie Portman as Jane Foster. It's got Stellan Skarsgård as Eric Selvig. We got Anthony Hopkins as Odin, Idris Elba as Heimdall, Ray Stevenson as Volstagg. Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. We have Josh Dallas as Fandral. I mean, he's gonna be recast because of scheduling conflicts in the next one, but Josh Dallas, he's so fun in this. I really love our Warriors 3 in general, and of course Sif. It's just a great cast. But it's weird to think because at the time when this movie came out, a lot of people were actually concerned because of two people who are our stars, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, playing Thor and Loki respectively. And of course, people were worried because Hemsworth and Hiddleston were not known really at this time. They weren't big names, they weren't big draws. They were giving these parts to actors that people were not as familiar with. So it's crazy to think about it in retrospect because watching this movie, you're like, everyone's in this. And then we also have Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth who are not both just amazing in this movie, but I think who are also just really great actors. I mean, Chris Hemsworth also just sounds like a guy that you'd want to chill with, to be honest. Every time I've heard an interview with Chris Hemsworth, I'm like, he just seems like a chill dude.
All right.
So, Chris.
Tom, is it?
It is, yeah. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Just Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Upon rewatching, something that I picked up from this is that the cast isn't just a great list of names at this point, but there's a reason why all of these people are names. You know what I mean? and that is that they are all amazing performers and actors. There's so much emotion in this story, whether we're talking about kind of the origins being the first part of the story on Asgard and just covering what happens with Thor to have him be declared unworthy and have him cast down to Midgard, to Earth, whether it comes to the relationship between Loki and Thor, and when Thor is banished, having to confront the fact that he can't go home. When Loki comes to him and explains, you can't go home, you know, Dad's dead now, Mom doesn't want to see you. By the way, none of this is true, of course. Classic Loki telling lies to Thor. Thor's acceptance of this and him thanking his brother for coming to see him. We really see that shift in Thor as a character. You see him go from kind of being this naive hero who thinks he can do whatever he wants to being a person that really considers other people's emotions and wants and puts other people above himself. He doesn't think of himself as necessarily being high and mighty. He sees that he has to earn his worthiness. And when he tells Loki, thanks for coming and telling me this, it's like heartbreaking, man. It's wow. I was not expecting that to hit me the way it did, but it hit me. And also on Tom Hiddleston's side of it, just his emotion, his frustration, and constantly feeling like the one who is outside. His conversation with Odin, where he reveals to Odin that he knows he's adopted, and Odin struggling to come up with the words to try to convince Loki that no, he's always been Odin's son, and Odin never saw him as being outside. That hurt that you see Loki processing.
You know, it all makes sense now why you favored Thor all these years. Because no matter how much you claim to love me, you're gonna never have a frost giant sitting on the throne of Asgard.
Man, there's a lot of emotional punches that we go through in this film. And it doesn't just end there. I mean, I think the other element of this that I really like is that the pacing for this story and the storytelling itself is, I think, quite well done. It's just a really good story that conveys what it needs to convey for the character development. It's really here to serve as the backbone for our character development. That's what the story's purpose is. It's to tell you the story of how Thor became Thor, how Loki became Loki, and how all of these characters interact with each other. The tragic lost love of Jane as Thor has to sacrifice the Rainbow Bridge to save the frost giants, who are still technically enemies of Asgard, but who, because they've brokered this peace, he's like, we can't let them die. I have to destroy the Rainbow Bridge, which means I'm sacrificing my love for Jane because I know I won't be able to get back to Earth to see her. It's all very moving, honestly. A lot of great character work. And I mean, it extends to almost every character that is in this. Not only is it great for the storytelling elements, the character work, but I think another thing that I really appreciate about this film is that stylistically and also in terms of just how it showcases Asgard and Thor, this movie really went for it. It really, really went for it, and I really admire that. This was a movie that before it was released, a lot of people, a lot of comics fans were concerned because obviously Thor is kind of an out there story, okay? Let's break it down. Thor is an alien from space, and his people are basically Norse gods in our mythos on Midgard, on Earth. But really, they're aliens that use technology and magic combined. What? And this movie does not shy away from it. I think a lot of people were worried that it was going to get kind of the X-Men treatment and get modernized and get like changed in an adaptation, but it didn't. They kept the Golden City. It's there. They kept the Destroyer. It looks amazing. It's frightening. They kept Thor's helmet even. They kept Loki's horns. They have frost giants. The Rainbow Bridge is literally a rainbow bridge. What more could you ask for here? And the other thing is that although I feel there are moments when Asgard does not look real, I think it's cool that they brought a stylistic choice to that. That's stylistically a choice to make Asgard look surreal. It looks like a place of wonder. I don't know if it's aged amazingly visually, but I will say something for this film. Having skimmed through it, because I was trying to go back and find a scene, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit, each frame in the film is really captivating. It's got good stills. They really thought about, if we had to break this film down into stills, how would that look? And the answer is pretty dang good. The other thing that I really appreciate about Thor and that I was very excited for with this film is that it is the first appearance of one of my favorite MCU characters of all time, who first appeared not in the comics, but in the MCU, Darcy Lewis, who recently actually did appear in the comics for the first time in Scarlet Witch, Steve Orlando's Scarlet Witch. Not the current Scarlet Witch volume, the one that happened before that, which was also Steve Orlando. But Darcy has had quite a journey in the MCU and in the comics. I love that she's just a woman that does so many random things. Like in this, she's talking about how she doesn't know a lot about science because she's studied political science as Jane's intern. She's like, I don't really know what we're doing here. And it's like, what? But I thought you were a science major. And she's like, political science. I was like, oh man. The beginning of Darcy Lewis's education. Wait until Darcy gets to WandaVision. When we get to WandaVision with Darcy, she's gonna be doing all kinds of science stuff. But yeah, I just love her. I think the other thing is I just love Kat Dennings, right? So I mean, Darcy is basically Kat Dennings, and Kat Dennings is so entertaining to watch. This film also introduces us to, and disposes of, King Laufey, who is played by Comfiore, who is also another freaking fantastic actor. Actually known for, I believe, his time at Stratford in Ontario, which if you don't know, Stratford is not like, well, I mean, it's named after the Stratford all the way in England, but Stratford is our big theater area. Well, one of them. Obviously, Toronto, we got theater too. There's theater all over the place, but Stratford is like big for Shakespearean theater. So Comfiore did some work there, and seeing him as King Laufey here, I think he just brings a certain amount of elegance and presence to this character. I think Laufey looks great. I think he sounds great. I wish we got more of him, because I just feel like there was a lot of potential with that character. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit, because I want to talk about some of the things that I had a problem with in this movie. I do have a few. We'll wait till the end for that. And speaking of presence, let's talk about Tom Hiddleston for a moment, who just oozes presence in this film. Honestly, this film could have easily just been called Loki instead of Thor. There's so much Loki development that goes on here, and that's something that I really love about it. In fact, this is really a film that is Thor and Loki, or Loki and Thor if you'd rather. It's really about their relationship, and what I love is that although we do have a villain, we've got Laufey over there, it's not really about Laufey. It's really about the family dynamic of these two brothers, how they relate to each other, how they differ, and the fact that they just want their dad to love them. Really, they just want to be loved, and they've got ideas for how to go about that, and they're learning different things in this film. They're definitely very different characters. It's all showcased in that final battle against each other, where Loki reveals his plan of basically destroying all of Jotunheim with the Rainbow Bridge, and Thor says, you know, you can't just do that.
I will be true heir to the throne.
You can't kill an entire race.
Why not?
Loki's basically just like, but why not genocide? That's my favorite part. It's so insane to see the differences in these two brothers. But at the same time, even though they both kind of want to kill each other at times, definitely Loki wants to kill Thor at times, there is still a brotherly love there that runs really deep. There's a lot of subtext in this movie. There's a lot of stuff that actors are just conveying with a look, and I think that's so powerful about the film. It really is a film that isn't just about telling us stuff. It really does attempt to show us stuff beyond even what the script goes into. People did their homework, okay? Not only does the threat of Laufey and Loki feel quite real in the film, but we also get the Destroyer, who I think they did really well. And even though the ending of the fight with the Destroyer is very lackluster, the rest of the fight is so solid when Sif is on it, trying to get it distracted, and it just completely spins its head around. Horrifying. Very disappointing, I will say though, that Thor just gets his hammer back and then is like, I'm just gonna use Mjolnir to take you out in basically one hit. That was a little bit disappointing. But other than that, I feel like they did the Destroyer justice. And then there's Odin in this film, which Anthony Hopkins has presence. And I think he makes the perfect cast for Odin. But I also feel that it's very funny in retrospect, knowing the journey that Odin goes on, but also knowing Odin from the comics, of how much they really sell Odin here as like this ideal father figure. But knowing what we know from later films, oh boy, wait till we get to Ragnarok. The secrets will be spilled. And also in the comics, it's kind of hilarious, but I still really love it. Even when I think about Thor versus Dark World, I feel like there's going to be a really big shift in terms of what we see from Odin. But I do love the father-son bonds that we establish in this film. And I think it is key to understanding almost like the downfall of Odin in the MCU. Odin's just a guy doing his best. He puts his pants on one leg at a time like the rest of us. Not only is the relationship between Odin and his sons very well done, I feel, but we also get some really great chemistry that I completely forgot about between Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth in this. Something that I feel like we actually didn't revisit as much in Thor Love and Thunder, despite it being called Love and Thunder. And I know that, like, you know, Thor's daughter, his adopted daughter, was named Love, but I feel like with a title like Love and Thunder, I was expecting a little bit more romance in that one. But all the romance is in this film, and it's pretty good, to be honest with you. There's a lot of chemistry between our two performers here, and it makes me sad that knowing what's coming, that we lost that we lose it along the way. However, there are also some things that romance leads to that is kind of one of my problems with this film somewhat. It is a problem that I talked about even with Iron Man 2, but I think it might be worse in this case, and that is the objectification of Chris Hemsworth in this film as Thor. Like, man, they got thirsty. I'm just trying to imagine what that pitch meeting was like, because it can't have been great. They were like, hey, we did Iron Man 2 and we had a bunch of success here with Black Widow. Man, Black Widow's hot. But what could we do, you know? We want to bring something for the ladies. See, we got Iron Man, but what is Iron Man? He's a blue-collar schlub. What about Spider-Man? No, Spider-Man, the ladies won't love that. They gotta say, there's enough of those in my apartment. I got enough Spider-Man as it is. But what about Thor? Thor could be a man for the ladies. Thor is a hero. He's got big himbo energy. It's so hot right now. It's everybody's favorite. The women will love him. The men will love him. Everyone will love Thor. And you know what? We gotta showcase that. We gotta showcase the hotness. We gotta be even more thirsty with this film. He's gonna be changing into his civilian clothes, but you know what? Lose that shirt. Get that shirt out of there. In fact, most shots, remove the shirt. We don't need it. How about, I got an even better idea. So he's going in. He's trying to infiltrate this place, right? What if it starts to rain? And then what if we get some mud wrestling? All the ladies are gonna love that. I feel like they just really went for it. They were like, never mind Black Widow's thighs. What about Chris Hemsworth's body? I don't even, like, his whole body feels like it's just, it made me uncomfortable. I was like, oh my goodness. I don't remember it being this intense with the objectification of Thor. They were like, we gotta get these ladies in there. Ladies, you know? They don't read comics, right? So that's one of my issues, but I also feel like there's some wasted potential in this movie. Well, I mean, the Warriors 3 are used here, but it just made me realize how they kind of fade off. I mean, they're in Ragnarok, they do come back, they do some stuff, okay? They're in Dark World, they do some stuff. No one cares though, because it's Dark World, although we'll see how that film is. But I just feel like we were really trying to establish them as a force here, and then in other films, they kind of get underplayed. But maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe they're gonna go on and do a million things, and it's going to be great. I remember them in Ragnarok, but I feel like we lost some of the development with those characters. They kind of fell off a cliff. Also, Laufey. Even though I think Laufey served his purpose in this film, I just feel they made him so cool, and then they just, like, Loki just one-shots him. It's kind of disappointing, even though he's not really the main focus of this film, so I understand why that went the way it went. But then don't make him so cool. Why'd you make him so cool? I want more Laufey. And then I was like, oh man, that's right. He just dies. Dang, disappointing. Killed by his own son that he just abandoned. We never really fully go into that story, do we? I would love to hear more about why Laufey did that. What was going on? What was going on in Laufey's mind? I want the Laufey movie, I think. And my final gripe is there are so many Dutch angles in this film. Like, someone went to film school here and they were thinking this film needs more Dutch angles. Sometimes it works. A lot of this stuff with Loki and kind of showing his conniving nature through the Dutch angles to make things feel a little off. I like that. But then when they use them every like 5 seconds, it starts to wear on you. And all of a sudden you're just like, Dutch angle. It's like the gif of Leonardo DiCaprio, you know, where he's like, hey, that was me all the time watching this movie. Dutch angle, Dutch angle. I get it. I get you understand what a Dutch angle is. Please stop. It's too many. It's too many Dutch angles. Overall though, I gotta say, I really liked Thor. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this film and how much I felt it was just a really strong piece of cinema and entertainment. I thought it told a good story. I thought it had some great performances. I thought the script was solid. I thought even the look of the film, even though at times it doesn't age amazing, and we do have some bad CGI fire still in this one, even with that, I can appreciate that they were trying to do something stylistic with it. And so overall, I gotta give this one a 4 out of 5. It was really good. And I'm glad that I rewatched it. I would rewatch it again. I had a fun time. You know what? I'm gonna be honest. I can't wait for the sequel. I'm sure it'll be great. Captain America was my favorite film from this phase, going into this review. But does it still hold up? Welcome back, everybody. Hello, my name is Amanda. You might know me as Vamp. And today, we're going to be talking about Captain America, the first Avenger. Except for then later when we find out that Carol's the first Avenger, but that's besides the point, because this is phase 1. This film, for me, was such an amazing movie. I went into this film thinking that I actually wasn't gonna like it because I thought I had these preconceived notions of who Captain America was, and then I saw it and I was like, man, I love Steve Rogers. He's just such a nice stand-up guy who's trying to do the right thing, who has to overcome these crazy odds to even become a hero, and his heart is just so in the right place. I really loved this character, and I really loved this film. Guess I'll say spoiler warning. Do I have to say spoiler warning for these? Do we say that thing? Spoiler warning, but also, come on, if you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing? This is a film that is basically Captain America's origin story. We find out how he becomes a super soldier. We find out what happens during the war when he's fighting in the war. So it's a classical story. It's a period piece. There's a lot of fun to be had with those elements of it. Or, you know, there would have been if this film had more to it.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
Basically, it follows Steve as he meets Dr. Erskine. He gets the procedure to become a super soldier. Initially, he's kind of being shafted and being used to promote bonds and go on tour and be in films to help the war effort. But then eventually, he forces his way into action when he finds out that his friend, Bucky Barnes, who is a part of the 107th Regiment, has gone missing in action and is presumed to be potentially could be dead, but also could be just kidnapped. No one wants to have this rescue mission happen because it's just too dangerous and they only lost 30 men. And so Steve teams up with Peggy and with the help of Howard Stark, Tony's dad, goes behind enemy lines to retrieve Bucky. We get the Howling Commandos. Steve then gets to be in action, and eventually he takes the fight right to Red Skull and Hydra, who are obviously working for the opposite side of the war during World War II. He also is forced to confront the fact that Red Skull is kind of like his darker shadow, in the sense that Red Skull also underwent a super soldier transformation, but his went wonky. And so as a result of that, his skin is burned off and he has the, you know, the Red Skull look. And I love how they played with those elements of, you know, this villain being such a good foil for Steve. I like that we got Red Skull in the first movie, but I do have some issues with this film. It ends with Steve in the ice, and actually how this film begins is with us finding him in the ice. So finding him in the ice, and then flash back to his whole origin story, and then flash forward to him being found in the ice after he goes down to prevent a big explosion from happening near New York City. Goes down in the ocean, we never find him again. We somehow find the cube that was lost, the cosmic cube, or do we call it a cosmic cube in the MCU? The Tesseract. Tesseract, cosmic cube, you know what I mean. In the MCU, we call it a Tesseract. And they find that, but they don't end up finding Steve until 70 years later when he's retrieved from the ice. And then teaser for Avengers, and that's basically the end. So how do I feel about this movie? Ultimately, I gotta say, I was pretty disappointed going back to it because, guys, it's boring. Why is it so boring? I don't remember it being this boring, but it just feels like we're walking through the motions. I mean, stuff happens. Some of it's exciting. I remember that pretty exciting chase after Steve first becomes a super soldier and he's running through the streets and he's barefoot. I mean, the CG and the green screen looks a little rough in that part, but Peggy standing a vehicle down and not moving because she's so convinced that her shot is that good. Moments like that are exciting, but most of the film is not that. It's people not really doing much. It's people standing around talking about things, and it's a lot of montages. Too many montages, because the runtime for this movie is 2 hours. And for the amount of montages they have, I feel like they could have just cut some down. A lot of it feels like a slideshow of things happening. Like, this thing happened, and then Steve went around, and he went on tour, and we're seeing him on tour, and there's training happening, and we're seeing all the training happening at the military base. And, you know, they're going out, and they're going on missions, and here's a montage of them going on missions with the Howling Commandos. Everything is a freaking montage in this movie. Most of the movie feels like one long montage of stuff. And let's not even forget about the weirdest montage of them all, which is kind of, I guess, more of a flashback to, if you will, to when Dr. Erskine is talking about working with Johann Schmidt and how Johann Schmidt had this vision for the super soldier serum, and Dr. Erskine didn't agree, and he ended up escaping and getting away, and that's now he's able to work with America. On the other side, he basically defected, and that whole scene where he's talking about Johann and what happened to him, it felt so weirdly psychedelic. I don't even remember that being in the movie. I was like, what is happening? Why does it look like this? Why is it so weird? So oddly enough, it's the most stylistic part of the film. It's also the weirdest part. And I wish in a way that there was more of it in retrospect. Feels odd because it feels so out of place. But my biggest complaint with this movie is that it just feels so safe. It feels so bland. Like, there's no substance. You have to think, we came out of Thor with so many Dutch angles and just such a powerful sense of style. And Iron Man, where they were just trying new things and clearly having a lot of fun on that set. And this feels like we're kind of starting to see a shift to maybe more of a corporate focus, where they're like, this is what we need to hit, and it all has to be a certain way in this box. Even the director that we have for this film, Joe Johnston, I was surprised because I thought to myself, that's interesting, because Joe Johnston's actually directed a lot of amazing films, like some really epic movies that I think have a lot of substance to them, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Jumanji. These are classics. And yet with Captain America, it feels like they're trying to tick off all the boxes of it being classic without actually trying to bring anything of emotional weight or style to the film.
Yeah, I had to improvise a little bit.
Especially the colors in this film. It just feels so devoid of color. And I understand that it's, you know, a period piece. So I feel like we're kind of trying to go for maybe a little bit of a sepia almost vibe to it. It's not quite sepia, but just that sense of it being, you know, it's in the past. It's got to feel old-timey. It's got to feel a little old-fashioned. But we could have also bumped up some of those colors. I know it's war times and things are bleak, but the film doesn't have to feel bleak for my eyeballs the entire way through. It has a feeling of gray to it. It has a feeling of just a flatness. It honestly felt so bland. It was like Steve Rogers drinking a glass of milk for 2 hours. You know how people always make that joke in the comics that Steve likes to drink milk? It just felt like that level of safe. And I think the reality is it just doesn't need to be that long. I think this film actually would have been better if it was a nice, really tight 90-minute film where instead of having so many montages, we just picked one moment to represent that montage. We just had one little scene where things actually happen as opposed to us just showing you the idea of things happening. Once again, it is still visual, but it's borderline telling instead of showing, because everything's done in montages as opposed to being done in a present moment for the characters where we feel the weight of a situation. The montages are used to fuel other scenes that come after, but not in a way that actually leads to those scenes feeling more impactful or meaningful. But I think that was the idea of them, is to give it ammunition and to show almost as well the passage of time in Steve's life as we go through it. But the strange thing is, everyone in this movie is good.
Remember when I made you ride the Cyclone at Coney Island?
Yeah, and I threw up.
While I don't feel that the way that any of this is presented is interesting, Chris Evans still somehow really shines as Steve. Obviously, Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter is another standout. Dominic Cooper as young Howard Stark. And Tommy Lee Jones, who I always forget is in this movie, and then I watch it and I'm like, oh yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is in here. And he's actually really good as Colonel Phillips.
Well, if it isn't the Star-Spangled Man with a plan, what is your plan today?
So there's some standout folks that do a good job with what they're given, but they're just not given very much to do is the problem, other than Steve. He gets the most to do, and even that feels like it's just kind of like going through the motions at times. Sebastian Stan doesn't even get an opportunity to really shine in this film, I felt, because there's just nothing going on. And so we know how good Sebastian Stan is now in the present. So to see that is just like, oh, it's just kind of disappointing. The fact that this has 80% on Rotten Tomatoes is insane to me. What were we smoking back then? Were we all right? Like, this film does not feel like 80%. It feels like it's just okay. Also, there's more CGI fire. Some of the CG in this and some of the green screen in this is pretty bad, guys. I gotta be honest with you. So overall, I think despite the fact that there's some actors in it that are really amazing and that actually do a good job as these characters, which is probably why after this we still got to see more of them, even though they didn't have a ton of screen time in this movie, I'm gonna give this one a 3 out of 5. Despite that, because that's just how boring it was. It just feels long. It's only 2 hours and it feels like a long movie. And it also feels like not enough happens for how long it is. So yeah, 3 out of 5. And I mean, I'm really only giving it a 3 out of 5 for the cast. I feel like more than anything. I think that's the major takeaway. And the character. I do think Captain America is presented well here, but I just don't think we do anything particularly interesting with him, even though the film does, I think, understand who Steve is as a character, which is why it resonated with me probably at the time, and why now that I've taken my rose-tinted glasses off for this rewatch, I'm feeling that it's just not enough to sustain a film. I think I was so wowed by it at the time that I just loved it, and now I'm just like, I mean, that's not enough to make the film great, though. The film's just okay. It's good. It's Iron Man 2 levels. Is that crazy? I don't know, but I said it. It's time to take off my rose-tinted glasses and rewatch Avengers. How will it hold up?
I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that.
Part of me was worried and was considering that when I go back into this movie, it's not going to be the same. Things are not going to hit. Dialogue won't be funny.
Sir, please put down the spear.
And I just won't maybe be able to connect with it as well as I did when Avengers first came out. And each time I've revisited this movie, I think up until this point, I've had fun. And so the question was, will this still be fun for me?
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
let's start off with just talking a little bit about Avengers and the build up to this movie. So I think something that is important to consider, even though I'm trying to see these films as films a little bit out of time, I'm trying to approach them from a viewpoint of, let everything else fall away and see the movie really for what it is. And I am doing that. However, you can't watch this movie without acknowledging the fact that every other film that we've watched to get here has led to this moment. This is a huge moment for Marvel, and they took a big risk, a big gamble, putting out all these movies to build to this one film where kind of everything else that we've built up to this point is riding on it. Like, if Avengers didn't do well, we wouldn't have the MCU today. And did it do well just because we were all like blinded by the light?
The light.
Was that why we loved it? And I gotta say, I have watched those other movies, but even if I hadn't, I feel like this movie is just so solid. Not only do we have payoff here that honestly feels very well earned, and something that I have a problem with, I think, in some other MCU movies, is that when we get these big moments, like when the Avengers are all suiting up, when they're all coming together for the first time, and we get to see them all finally gathered, all of that feels like hype that is deserved. We are buzzing with excitement at that moment, and I can't ignore that even though I'm trying to watch this disconnected, I still felt the excitement. All of the hype that we've gotten is earned, and this movie also exists in a place where I feel like this movie itself is just solid, and there's a few reasons for that. I think it provides a solid foundation, especially for these characters. It's very clear going into the movie that the movie understands who each of these characters are. We know who Iron Man is. We've already seen him in other movies maybe, but even if you haven't, this is a great introduction to him. This is a fabulous introduction to Black Widow, who, let's be honest, didn't actually have too much anyways before she's introduced in Avengers. I love the chair scene, the intro scene that we get with her, and her taking the call in the middle of that interrogation.
We need you to come in.
Are you kidding? I'm working.
Also, whoever is trying to say that Scarlett Johansson is not like super cool as Black Widow, I've seen a lot of people trying to put other characters above her. And look, I get it. There's a lot of great characters. Florence Pugh as White Widow, she's great. However, Scarlett Johansson, especially in Avengers, she is so freaking great as Black Widow. She kicks so much butt. My goodness. We did not know how good we had it having this entire cast, honestly. Getting to see Chris Evans as Captain America in this. I mean, he embodies Steve so freaking well. He really represents, I think, everything that Steve stands for. The clash between him and Iron Man is so good. We also, of course, have Chris Hemsworth coming in as Thor, who really brings a very otherworldly sense to the film. And he's representing like completely different things than the rest of the team. And then of course there's Hulk. And let's not forget that this was Mark Ruffalo's first film as Hulk, and he completely nails it in my opinion. In fact, I think that his Hulk is actually more interesting than Ed Norton's Hulk. And I know that's going to be a hot take for some people, but that's how I feel about it. I think Mark Ruffalo's take with the character and what Marvel ended up also doing with that character with Mark Ruffalo is just more interesting, because I think exploring the relationship between the two characters of Bruce Banner and the Hulk, and the fact that they are kind of the same person while also being different, while also being separate, but coexistence being a huge part of who they are, and Bruce feeling like he's the monster, just all of that I think is so well laid out and well explored in this movie. And Mark Ruffalo just immediately is believable as Bruce Banner. I think he's a great Bruce, honestly. I think the best thing about this movie is the interactions. And that's what I love about the movie, is that it's got great action. It's got these fun, big, real sets where real things happen. Like there is at one point a car that just like they flip when they're in the tunnel. It just blows up or flips, and that they did that. They really did that. I love that there's so much practical effects in this movie, which is why I think it also ages very well visually. But the whole thing that we're here for really isn't even the action, really isn't even the plot and the fact that, you know, the Chitauri are like invading, who we made up just for this movie, I believe. The whole fun part of this, other than, you know, getting to see the helicarrier and all of the fun comic book references that you're like, I can't believe they're actually going there. This is such a big component of the comics. This is such a kind of outlandish thing. The helicarrier is so ridiculous, but they just did it and they committed to it. Outside of all of that, it's not really what it's about. It's not about the plot. It's not really even about Loki. It's about these characters and how they relate to each other. And sometimes how Loki still relates to Thor. I gotta say, I think for chemistry, the best chemistry in this movie still, you can't beat it. The brotherly love, the resentment, their relationship is so complicated. And so every time I see it, I'm like, yes. But Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth just have electric chemistry on the screen. I love watching them together, so I'm glad we got to see them in this.
Listen well, brother.
I'm listening.
There's so many jokes that still work as well in this movie, speaking of that. I mean, the film is cheesy, don't get me wrong. It is a bit cheesy, but I feel like it works because there's a sense of earnestness to it. And I think, honestly, that is when superhero media, when superhero movies especially, work the best. When there is a commitment, when there is a sense of honesty to the source material, we just embrace it fully. We just accept it and love it for what it is, and accept that sometimes it is going to be a little silly or a little goofy or larger than life. But that's the fun of hero stories, and that's the fun of superhero comics. Obviously, we can't ignore the fact that Joss Whedon is heavily attached to this film. But regardless of Joss Whedon as a person, what I will say is it's very clear that Joss Whedon is a comic book guy. You know, you can tell that he's a guy that's written comics and understands them, because the way that this film is approached, the way it's all built up, even just the opening of the movie, it immediately pulls you in. You're dropped into this horrifying circumstance. The stakes are raised immediately. This idea of the cube is going to potentially blow up everything. We don't know how big the explosion radius is going to be. Are we going to lose a city? Are we going to lose a country? Are we going to lose the world? It's just constantly getting higher and higher. And then we find it's Loki, and then Loki wants to rule the world. And so the stakes are always going up. And then in order to defeat Loki, you know, they're going to nuke him, and then we have to deal with the nuke. So everything is just becoming more exciting, so the momentum is solid. I recently also rewatched The Mummy, and I'd like to liken Avengers to The Mummy in the sense 1999 The Mummy, to be clear, not Tom Cruise The Mummy. That Mummy, that's not so good. But 1999 Mummy, I think, is really great in the sense that it just has such a solid momentum the entire way through the movie. It's one thing into the next thing, and it has moments still to breathe, like Avengers does. We do take beats with these characters. We do get to know them. We have these little one-on-one, these little intimate moments. But the story never loses its momentum. And I think pacing has been all over the place recently for movies. So to see something like this, it's like, man, that is near perfect. Also, the music, beautiful. And I think each moment that we get with the character, where they're interacting with each other, tells us so much about each of those characters along the way. So the story isn't just about something that happens to these people. It's about who these characters are and how that affects how they interact with each other and the world around them. And this idea of a team coming together. And it also follows one of my favorite tropes from comics, the idea of all good team-ups have to start with a versus, which I love. I can't believe that we got Thor versus Hulk in this movie. And sure, it gets cut short, but the fact that they just went there. The other thing is, we talked earlier about this idea of this movie taking risks, and it's very clear that they were really considering, what do we want to do in this movie, because who's to say that this movie might not be the last one? And, you know, there's this idea of when you feel that, you know, today might be your last, how much different you would experience the day, how much differently you would live that day. And I think that is a testament to this film. I can feel a little bit of that sense of joy in wanting to get in as much as you possibly can in a way that serves the material, that serves the characters, that serves the story, but also gives the audience something to take with them in case this is our last hurrah, in case this is the last comic book movie we do. This was the end of Phase 1, and I think Phase 1 ended with a bang. And actually, looking at the lineup that's coming up, I think it is the best ending of all the phases. I think it has one of the best build-ups as well, even though I feel like the movies leading up to this for me have been a mix of good to great to like, that could have used some work. But overall, I think all of them still have merits. All of them were still quite solid, and all of them led to this moment, and the moment gives us the payoff. It gives us so much to consider and think about for these characters going forward. Loki is a great villain, and I love watching Tom Hiddleston do his thing. He's clearly having the time of his life. They let him also be super evil, so that works great. They let him remove a man's eye. And you know what's even better? We didn't have to see it, and it was still scary. You know why? Because Tom Hiddleston is a great actor, and his reaction to that happening as Loki is enough for our imagination to fill in the gaps. Also, this movie is from a time when we weren't afraid to let audiences use their imagination. We didn't hold people's hands. Today, some of this stuff, I think if we released it, I think there would be people that would say, I don't understand why this happened. I think there's actually still people today that go back to this movie and say that don't understand stuff because it wasn't clearly stated in the film what was happening, but it's all implied if you're paying attention to the story, you know what I mean? The film doesn't like hold our hand too much in telling us, let me tell you exactly why Phil Coulson's death means everything. And it's not just about the fact that this movie is the sum of all the parts. It's also about the fact that this movie is once again giving us something else to look forward to with the ending. And we get that, of course, that Thanos teaser, which, wow, that CGI did not age well. No, it did not. And of course, we didn't know where we were going with Thanos when they were making this movie. They had no idea really what they were going to do with that. But I think they were just thinking, we'll give them something and then hopefully we get more movies. Hopefully more happens. I love that the momentum is just carried throughout the film, right up to the end, right up to that little tease. Of course, where will it take us next? Well, I know where we're going immediately next. Iron Man 3 and then actually Thor Dark World. So the bad CGI Thanos it felt like it was a bit of a premonition of maybe some horrors to come. But we'll see, you know, I love Guy Pearce, and so I'm very hopeful that Iron Man 3 will actually have more for me in it than what I remember last time I saw it, and that I'll come to get a better appreciation for this film. So fingers crossed that it does well. And also, if you've noticed that my voice is a little rough, I just have a little bit of laryngitis. It's just, I've been streaming a lot. Also, if you don't join me on stream, make sure you check that out. That's over here on the live tab on YouTube or at twitch.tv/vampx13. And I've also been doing lives over, of course, on my Patreon and stuff like that. So if you don't already know about that, we also have a comic book club and we also watch movies together sometimes. So I talk a lot, so I'm just losing my voice a little bit from overuse. But I hope you enjoyed this review. Overall, I'd give this movie a 4.5 stars, I think, out of 5. I just think it's near perfect. It's so good. And I can't wait to talk to you about Iron Man 3. It might not be as good, guys. It might not be as good. I'll see you in the next one. Let me know what you think of all the films in Phase 1. What would be your order, your favorites, your least favorites? There's some good moments and some bad moments. So let me know what you loved and what you didn't love so much revisiting. And I'll see you in the next video. And until then, as always, stay nerdy. Bye!